Should you pay cash for a car or finance the purchase? Is a $32,000 car too much for somebody making $120,000 a year? And have you seen the new email tool from Google that can help you get to inbox zero? We'll answer these questions and more on this, the 141st episode of the DoughRoller Podcast.
Welcome to the DoughRoller Podcast, where the best thing money can buy is financial freedom. We help you make more, spend less, and invest the rest. And now your host, Rob Berger.
Whether you're just starting out, buried under a mountain of debt, or well on your way to financial freedom, this is the podcast to help you take your finances to the next level. Hey, everybody. Hope you're having a great day. I have an email that I received from a reader named Stephanie that we're going to talk about today about buying that car, whether you should pay cash or not, how much you should spend. She sends in really a great email packed with really a number of related questions that I think will really hit home for a lot of you. I hope they do. And they hit home for me, I can tell you that. And so that's what we're going to cover today. Before we get to it, a couple of things. First, got an email from a listener named Dan. He responded to my podcast on Inbox Zero, getting to Inbox Zero. That was podcast 133. You can find that at DoughRoller.net/podcast 133. And he ended up sending me an invite to Inbox by Gmail, which is a new tool that Google is working on. And he didn't have any extra invites at first. I tried to get one directly from Google. You can sign up. If you just Google Inbox by Gmail, you'll come to the main page. And I hadn't heard back, and then he, I guess, got a hold of some invites. He sent me one. It doesn't work with email accounts that you have set up on Google that aren't Gmail. So through the business account that you can get. So I couldn't use it for my dr at DoughRoller.net email, but I've signed up with it for my personal email, which is just a straight up Gmail account. And I've only started to use it. I'm going to talk more about it maybe in an upcoming podcast, but it is a phenomenal tool. And it has a lot of the things built in that you have to use add-ons to get right now with Gmail. I mean, for example, I can make an email disappear from my inbox and set it to come back a day from now if I want to get rid of it because I can't deal with it, but I don't want to forget about it. And that's just one of the features. It's a really, I think, helpful tool. And so I wanted to mention it. You can check it out. Again, it's Inbox by Gmail. I don't know if I will get any invites to hand out to folks now that I'm in, so to speak. But if I do, I'll let you know. Actually, I'll probably let you know through the newsletter. So if you haven't signed up for that, you can do that at DoughRoller.net/newsletter. But a big thank you to Dan for that. And that kind of brings me to a tip of the day that I want to cover. That's something I've learned just here recently in a very real way. And that is, when you're trying to accomplish something, whether it's related to your finances, your career, relationships, whatever, figure out a way that you can be held accountable to somebody for your goal. If it's just you in isolation, it gets much, much harder. But if you can be held accountable to somebody or some group of people, it will give you that extra incentive to accomplish your goals. I learned that actually from recording that podcast on getting to Inbox Zero, where I talked about my strategy. And shortly after that podcast aired, I got an email, and someone sort of laughingly said, I hate to make your task harder, getting to Inbox Zero, but I'm sending you this email anyway, and they had a question. And it occurred to me, you all that send me email, you'll know whether I'm getting to Inbox Zero or not, because either I'll respond to your email in 24 hours or I won't. And if I don't, you know that I failed that day to get to Inbox Zero. And I thought, well, there you go. How's that for having 50,000 people hold you accountable to a goal? So I actually think about that as I look at my inbox. I'm about a day and a half. That's the oldest email in my inbox that I would respond to right now. So hopefully I'll get back into the 24-hour period by the end of the day. But I'm trying to do my best. But having folks out there hold you accountable, it does affect your behavior. So if you've got a goal, if you're trying to accomplish something, start a new habit, a good habit, break a bad habit, find someone that can hold you accountable. I think it'll help you reach that goal. Okay, on to the main topic. This email comes from a listener named Stephanie. She writes in, she says, "Hi, Rob. I recently graduated from graduate school and have a good paying job. After getting the job, I immediately bought a brand new car because I had no money to put down and my old car broke down. I financed the car for 60 months at 0% interest. I used the rebates on the new car as my down payment. The balance of the loan is a little over $32,000 $1,000, and I'm also paying off credit card debt of $5,000, which is also interest-free for a few more months. When I finish paying off the credit cards, is it worth it to pay off my car early, considering there is no interest on the loan? Also, my gross income is about 4 times the cost of the car, and the payment is 4.25% of my gross monthly pay and about 8.5% of my net monthly pay. I bought a top-of-the-line Ford Fusion. Did I purchase too much car considering my income? Thank you in advance for any advice that you can offer. Well, that's a great question, Stephanie, and I appreciate you sending me the email. First of all, I got to give Stephanie kudos here. She's clearly got a handle on her finances. I mean, she's calculated out the payments as it relates to her gross income or her net income, and she's asking all the right questions, and she's trying to think this through. And I mean, that's the first step. In law, people talk about, getting the right answer. That's the easy part. Well, most of the time. The hardest part is asking the right question. And that's what keeps me up at night. Well, it doesn't really, but what it used to was, am I asking all of the right questions in a case? Or am I missing something? Are there questions out there I should be asking that I haven't even thought of? That kind of concerns me more than the answers. And Stephanie's asking all of the right questions. Let me first sort of give my 2 cents on some of the questions, and then we'll get to the bigger topic of, should you finance or pay cash for a car and that sort of thing. But I want to address a couple of the sort of subsidiary questions in her email. The first is, should you pay off a loan early if you have 0% interest? My answer to that is almost uniformly no. I just don't see any reason to. Even if I had the money to pay it off, I'd simply stick it in a FDIC insured bank account and earn the interest. Why not? Why pay it off early? Not only do you earn the interest, but it gives you that extra liquidity, that extra cash in the bank in case something totally unexpected were to come up. So, could I imagine a scenario where someone might want to pay off a 0% loan? Sure. I mean, there could be different reasons to do that, perhaps. Maybe it just helps you sleep better at night, for example. But barring something like that, if you've got a 0% interest loan, I don't see any reason to pay it off early. I wouldn't in any event. If you did, would it be some sort of horrible, profound mistake in life? No. But I wouldn't pay off the 0% loan early. So that's my first thing. Then the second thing is, this is a fascinating question. You said, did I purchase too much car considering my income? Well, I guess there's a couple of different ways to answer that. I mean, the loan is at $32,000. I don't know if that's what the car cost, but we'll assume that it is. Stephanie makes 4 times that amount, so we're looking at almost $130,000. So, from an income perspective, I know that's certainly not too much a car to afford. I assume, again, we don't know all of Stephanie's finances, but assuming she's not, we know she's got $5,000 in credit card debt. Assuming that's it in terms of debt, that's going to be a very manageable payment to make. What I would ask, though, is that the right question? Did I purchase too much car considering my income? How about this question? Did I purchase too much car considering my assets or considering my net worth? To me, that's a better question to ask. Or you could ask it this way. Did I purchase too much car considering all of my other financial goals that I have? So from an income perspective, oftentimes we can afford a car. We can make the payment, right? What I think is more important is, how is that affecting our other goals, whether they're retirement, saving for our children's education, in Stephanie's case, paying off the credit card debt, maybe saving for a home, maybe saving to start a business, whatever your life's passions are and goals are. To me, that's the better question. Did she buy too much car considering her income? No. But did she buy too much car considering her net worth? Well, of course, we don't know her net worth, but I would suspect she did. Why? Because she financed it. And that gets me to sort of the main topic that I want to cover in response to Stephanie's email, and that is why you should pay cash for a car. And I will tell you right up front, this is not what I did when I started out, like probably most of you, many of you. When I got out of law school, my wife and I borrowed money to buy a car. In fact, we borrowed money to buy our first 1, 2, 3, probably 4 cars. It wasn't until about 9 years ago, almost 10 years ago, actually 10 years ago this January, Did we pay cash for our first car? We got to the point where we could do that. We could have, however, paid cash for all of our cars. I just wasn't thinking about finances then the way I think about finances now. So why do we pay cash for cars now? Why do I think it's by far the preferred way to buy a car? Well, I'm going to give you 6 reasons. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how you go about actually doing it. I mean, it's one thing to sit here behind the mic and say, you should pay cash for your car. Then you've got real life and all the practicalities. Now, the how part of this podcast, I'm going to tell you right now, is not going to be earth-shattering. It's going to be Captain Obvious kind of stuff. But that's generally how most personal finance goes. At least the good personal finance rules of thumb and approaches to life are usually pretty common sense, right? If anything isn't common sense, you should be concerned. When things get too complicated, too convoluted, you want to make sure you keep your wallet in your pocket and double check what you're about to do. Okay, so 6 reasons that I pay cash for a car. 6 reasons I think you should pay cash for a car. Number 1, certainly true for me, you spend less. You absolutely spend less. It's much harder to pull $20,000 or $10,000 or $50,000, whatever your case may be, out of a bank account and hand it over to a car dealer than it is to sign a piece of paper and make 60 easy payments of $400 a month or $500 a month. Paying cash absolutely causes you to spend less than you otherwise would. I know in my last car, it was a used Camry, bought it in 2011. And I thought about, financing. I thought about buying a more expensive car. I looked at a Lexus hybrid. I even drove one of the SUVs. I looked at the Hyundai Sonata, which I would have had to have bought new because I wanted to get the hybrid so I can ride in what are called the high occupancy vehicle lanes in Washington, D.C. And if you live somewhere that it doesn't have those because you don't have our traffic, count yourself fortunate. In any event, I wanted a hybrid. So, I looked at a number of different things and I decided, well, whatever I buy, I'm going to pay cash. And I ended up going with the least expensive option. Now, I probably could have found something even less expensive than I did. But with what I was looking at, I spent a lot less because I paid cash, and it was painful. I still remember going into the finance guy's office at the Toyota dealer with my laptop, saying, okay, I'm going to wire this money to you. And he gave me all the credentials. I logged into my bank, wired them the money. That's how I paid for it. I remember talking to him and saying, I bet a lot of people do this. This is in Tysons Corner, Virginia, a very wealthy area of not just of Virginia and D.C., but of the country. I said, I bet a lot of people come in and, pay cash for a car. And he kind of looked at me and said, nope, no one really does. And it really surprised me. Maybe it shouldn't have. But by paying cash for that car, I spent a lot less than I would have, I believe, if I'd financed it. Now, maybe you have a little more discipline than I do when it comes to that kind of thing, but I suspect most people don't. So that's the first reason you end up spending less. The second reason is, depending on what you're buying, but if you're buying a new car, Stephanie mentioned that she got 0% and she got some rebates that she used for the down payment, which is, that's fantastic. But that's not always the case. Oftentimes, they'll give you either 0% or the rebates. And so if you pay cash for the car, you get the rebates. If you go with the 0% financing, you don't. And I kind of like that because it really shows you in this context that 0% isn't free. Now, again, Stephanie maybe found a great deal where she got both, but most of the time you don't. And so if you're buying a new car and you pay cash, you're gonna tend to be able to get richer discounts on a new car. And even in the context of a used car, you might be able to negotiate a better price if you're paying cash. Not always, but sometimes. So you might get some discounts that you would not otherwise get if you pay cash. Again, not always. Stephanie might be an exception, but I think that's often the case. That's the second reason to pay cash. The third reason, again, this is going to be extremely obvious, but I'm going to put some numbers on it, and that is you avoid interest, right? So again, in Stephanie's case, she had 0% interest. You may qualify for 0% interest. If you do, then this won't apply to you. But I know obviously a lot of people don't. Maybe the offers aren't available. You're buying a used car, whatever. Interest payments add up. I used her number of $32,000 a 5-year loan at 6% interest, your monthly payment's going to be $618.65. Now, it's, of course, going to be both principal and interest. Any idea how much your total interest payments will be over 5 years? Well, of course, it doesn't add up like it does on a mortgage because it's a much smaller amount and it's just 5 years. It still adds up to over $5,000, $5,118.98. I would much rather have that money to put to retirement or an emergency fund or paying off credit card debt or countless other financial goals. So the third reason is, and an obvious one, but you avoid interest payments and they add up, particularly depending on obviously how much you've borrowed and what your term is. The interest payments really add up. So that's the third reason to pay cash. The fourth reason is that it requires financial discipline. It's not easy to pay cash for a car, and I'm not suggesting for a moment that it's easy. We couldn't do it for quite some time, or at least we didn't do it. But it requires financial discipline. And here's the key. When you have discipline in one area of your life, it helps you with discipline in other areas, whether it's other financial areas like paying off your credit card debt, saving for a home, saving for retirement, or discipline in your work, relationships, your home. I'm reading a book called The Power of Habit, and it's a fantastic book. It's written by Charles Duhigg, Duhigg, The Power of Habit. I'm holding the book now. And one of the things he does throughout this book is he references numerous academic studies on habits. And one of the studies that they found was that when you create a habit in one area, you have the discipline and the willpower to maybe stop overeating, for example. It helps you as you go to create other habits in other areas. Just quoting from the book, he wrote, people get better at regulating their impulses. They learn how to distract themselves from temptations. And once they've gotten into that willpower groove, your brain is practiced at helping you focus on a goal. And then he went on to say, that's why signing kids up for piano lessons or sports is so important. It has nothing to do with creating a good musician or a 5-year-old soccer star. And he's quoting from an academic who had done a study. He goes on, when you learn to force yourself to practice for an hour or run 15 laps, you start building self-regulatory strength. A 5-year-old who can follow the ball for 10 minutes becomes a 6th grader who can start his homework on time. And I think the same thing is true here. A family that learns to pay cash for a car and develops that discipline learns to save for a down payment for a home and learns to save for retirement and for their children's education and countless other things. It reminds me of Admiral McRaven. I don't know if you heard his speech at a graduation for students at the University of Texas. It's really good. And in fact, I will embed the YouTube video into the show notes for this episode. Again, you'll find the show notes for today's episode at DoughRoller.net/podcast 141. He was a Navy SEAL, or is a Navy SEAL, and he gave the students there sort of 10 life lessons he learned from being a Navy SEAL and going through the training that he had to go through. And the very first one, I'm just going to give away the first one. He had 10, so I'm going to talk about the first one. You think, here's a Navy SEAL. He's going to give us some advice on how to, be the best person that we can be. What's it going to be? You know what it was? Make your bed in the morning. How crazy is that? Here's what he said. He said, if you make your bed every morning, you will have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a small sense of pride, and it will encourage you to do another task and another and another. By the end of the day, that one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you will never do the big things right. And if by chance you have a miserable day, you will have come home to a bed that is made, that you made. And a made bed gives you encouragement that tomorrow will be better. If you want to change the world, start off by making your bed. I think that's powerful. When I first heard it, frankly, I thought it was kind of stupid. I got to be honest with you. Well, that's just crazy. And as I thought more about it, I thought, no, there is a really key truth there. As we start to learn discipline, even in small things, it affects other parts of our lives. And yes, I have started making my bed. And in fact, my wife said to me yesterday in a very serious tone, she said, Rob, I think someone broke into our house. I said, really? She goes, yes, and they went up to our bedroom and made our bed. Well, there you go. All right, number 5. Paying cash for a car forces you to assess what really matters in life to you. It really forces you to make some trade-offs. If you're going to pay cash for a car, for the vast majority of us, you will not get as nice a car as you'd get if you financed it. And then it really forces you to say, well, okay, well, how important is this car thing how important is the car in my life? And it forces you to really assess that question. And in a way that if you finance, you just don't even have to think about it. What's $400 a month or $500 a month or $600 a month? You just sign on the dotted line and drive off in a nice new car that's of course, no longer new once you've driven it off the lot. But paying cash forces you to decide what matters more to you in life. You have to make trade-offs. Is it the car or my child's education? Is it the car or saving for retirement? Is it the car or getting out of credit card debt? Is it the car or retiring early, perhaps? Is it the car or starting a business? It could be whatever's important to you. But I think when most people try to assess their lives, when they create their bucket list, when they decide what's important and passionate to them, when they talk about regrets and what they missed in life, I've never heard someone say, I really missed out because I wanted a brand new shiny car and I never got it. I've never heard anyone say that. And paying cash for a car forces you to make those kinds of assessments that financing a car allows you to ignore. All right. The 6th and final reason I think paying cash for a car is so important is that, and it's kind of related to 5, but it enables you to prioritize other financial goals. Once you've done that assessment that I just talked about, paying cash for a car allows you to then say, okay, yeah, maybe the car is not the most important thing in my life. Let's figure out what is. And let's make sure we put our resources to those things that are most important to us. And when you start to prioritize your financial goals that way, you start to look at life a little differently. You start to ask yourself, well, what really is more important to me, and how do I make that a priority? In my case, for me personally, my biggest priority is freedom, to have the time to be able to do the things that I want to do. By that, I don't mean not work anymore, not do something that earns an income. That's not even the point. It's that I can work where I want to work, when I want to work, how I want to work, doing what I want to do. To me, as it relates to money, that's the single most important priority that I have. Now, of course, I have responsibilities. I have a wife, 2 children. We have a home. Reality, right? So, I'm not asking these questions in some sort of bubble without consideration to the other aspects of my life. But when it came to buying a car 3 years ago, that was absolutely the question I was asking. And frankly, I could have spent even less money than I did. However, had I not been making the assessment that I talked about and then prioritizing my financial goals, I'm confident I would have ended up spending less or spending more than I did. And here's the thing. When you do that, when you finance that car and spend more than you probably should have, and you're not making an assessment about what matters most in your life and then prioritizing your financial goals around that assessment, what ends up happening is you just kind of live life on autopilot. You just get that new car because that's what people do, and and you just kind of go through life, and you don't even know. Here's the thing: you don't even know what you missed. You have no idea what you've missed. You have no idea what your life could have been like. And you say, oh, come on, Rob, this is just a stupid car. Do you know how much money we spend on cars and how much we sacrifice for the cars that we drive? I just marvel at families that I know, are working hard but struggling, and they pull up in that new $30,000 or $40,000 Toyota or Honda or Ford or Lexus or whatever. And I just, it's not at all a judgmental thing. It's more of a feeling of sadness that they don't even know, the kind of life they could have had. And the thing is, for those kinds of folks, and I know that was me at one point, it didn't stop at the car, right? I mean, if the worst thing I ever did in finances was spent $20,000 on a new car, I'd be thrilled. Trust me, I've made far worse mistakes than that. The problem is, when you live this life of a financed car that you really can't afford otherwise, chances are other areas of your life and your finances are being affected too. The car is just the symptom. All right. I'm done preaching. Those are my 6 reasons to pay cash for a car. Now, how do you do it? Well, again, you're going to call me Captain Obvious, but I'm going to give you 4 things. The first thing is you got to get real about what you can afford. Now, Stephanie is all over this. As we mentioned, she did a great job figuring out her finances, how much she makes, the payment, what percentage it is of her income. And so she's got this one covered. But not everyone does. I mean, sometimes, if you're the kind of person that goes into a car dealer and lets the car dealer tell you what you can afford. Oh my goodness, please don't do that. It's like asking a realtor how much you can afford for a home. Big mistake, because they're going to tell you the top dollar number. You want to get real about what you can afford. And to do that, you got to have it's not even just a percentage of your income. I could give you some rule of thumb, X percent of your income. The problem is you got to look at your entire finances. Are you someone with $200,000 in student loan and $25,000 in credit card debt? Or are you someone with perhaps no debt, but really anxious to buy a home? And maybe that's a priority. So there's no sort of rule of thumb that makes sense for everybody. So you have to look at all of your finances, but you got to get real about what you can afford. The second thing is you got to get real about what you should afford, right? Just because you can afford it doesn't mean you should. I think this is probably the question Stephanie's asking herself. She knows she can afford it, but based on her email, I suspect she's now questioning whether she should have bought that much car. And it's a great question for her to be asking. And the good thing about Stephanie's case is she's got options. She can always sell the car and go buy a less expensive car. She has that option. It sounds like if the credit card debt is her only other debt, she's doing great. She's making a good salary. She'll have that credit card debt paid off in no time. And so she has options. But speaking more broadly, should you afford it? And that's when you have to think about, again, assessing what matters most in your life, prioritizing your financial goals. The question of should you pay X for a car can't be answered in a vacuum. You've got to assess all of your other financial goals, whatever they may be, your other priorities, and then make some trade-offs. Now, the third thing I'd say is if you want to get real, you've made some mistakes, you've got an expensive car sitting in your driveway, you need to think long and hard about selling it and buying a cheaper one. The first step to paying cash for a car is getting rid of that big car payment you've got now. Now, of course, some people are going to be underwater and you're going to have a choice to make. Should you sell it and then you're underwater and you have some money in the bank to buy a cheap car? But if you want to get serious about your finances, and paying cash for a car, I think you need to think long and hard about selling your existing car. If it's an expensive car, if you've concluded you have a car that's frankly more than you should have spent, then to me the next step is thinking long and hard about selling that existing car and buying a less expensive one. The fourth and final thing that I'll say on this is, regardless of where you are now, what cars you've got, what you're going to do with your existing cars, maybe you don't have one, maybe you're just out of high school or college and you're trying to figure out what you want to do here, is this: you got to set up a budget item for your next car. Even if you've got one now, maybe you've got a car that's paid off. That's okay. How long is it going to last? When are you going to be in the market for a new car? Figure out how much you need to be saving each month and add that to a savings account. One of the things it does, there's sort of an obvious thing it does, right? It allows you to have the money in the bank to buy your next car, right? Of course, you'll have to figure out how much you're going to spend. I think the less you spend, the better on a car, because once you buy it, it just starts to go down in value till it's worthless. But I know there's, it's I guess a personal question. You'll decide for yourself how much you're going to spend. But the obvious thing is that you budget for it, you put that money aside each month, and you have it when you're ready to buy your car. But the other thing it does is it forces you. This is how you actually set your priorities for your other financial goals. As you're looking at your monthly budget and you're setting aside money for retirement and for your child's education and for buying a home and putting money towards credit card debt and buying your next car, it forces you to set some priorities. What's important to you? It may cause you to rethink how much you should be setting aside for your car, and ultimately how much you should be paying for your next car. So set up a budget item. It's easy to do in a program like YNAB. You Need a Budget, which you know is my favorite. You can check that out at DoughRoller.net/YNAB. That is an affiliate link. Or you can use a spreadsheet or a piece of paper. It doesn't really matter. But setting that budget item for your monthly budget not only helps you save for the next car, which is what you really got to do if you're going to pay cash, but it forces you to prioritize your money, prioritize your financial goals, and to really think about what matters most. The whole car thing, it seems so, at one level, it seems so trivial. We all have cars. It's sort of just a fact of life. We go buy them, we use them, they get worn out, you buy another one. And it seems just so almost trivial, except that they really are expensive. And over a lifetime, we spend a fortune on cars. And if we could just think a little bit more about how much we're spending, what we're driving, and how much real satisfaction in life it gives us, or perhaps doesn't give us. I mean, the truth is, I spent more money on a car when I didn't have the money to spend than I do now. And yeah, it was fun at first. I had a brand new Acura TL. I remember it was 1999. Loved that car. But you know what? After a few weeks, a few months, you don't even think about it. You just get in it and drive. And it stops adding to your life in the way you thought it did when you first bought it. And so it's funny now that I could afford a nicer car. I actually drive a car that's not as nice as that Acura TL that I once owned, because it's just not important to me. So there you go. Those are my thoughts on Stephanie's email, specifically and more generally, why you should pay cash for a car and how you should go about doing it. Is it easy? No, it's not easy, but it's doable. I will add one last thing, something that I didn't do. Isn't it great for me to have a podcast talking about all the things you should do that I didn't do? Well, here you go. Here's another one. I didn't really think about my commute when we bought our first home. We moved from, I could walk to the metro and a 15-minute subway ride to my job. We moved to buy a home, and then it was an hour and a half commute. And I actually took the bus at first. I had to walk a quarter mile, got on a bus, 45 minutes to the Pentagon, where there's a subway station, got on the subway, 20-minute subway ride to my office, hour and a half trip back home. Eventually, I started driving to work, which is miserable in Washington, D.C. That was still at least an hour, if not longer. I didn't really think about that in terms of not just a car, but quality of life. If we had stayed in the area where we originally moved, even if we stayed in an apartment for longer, one, we didn't need two cars. One was more than enough, and even could have gotten by without a car. And the commute was much easier. So in terms of paying cash for a car, really think about where you're living, where you're going to, particularly if you're young and you're just starting out and you're trying to figure all these things out, think about where you're going to live in relation to your work and all the other things you want to do. Even paying a little more for rent because you're maybe closer into the city can actually be worth it if it saves you a fortune on a car expense, transportation, and just the headache of the commute. Well, there you go. Hey, if you have other tips on how to pay cash for a car, I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me an email, dr@DoughRoller.net. As you know, I read and respond to every single email. Hey, hope you have a great day. Until next time, remember, the best thing money can buy is financial freedom.